Well, we offer you some of these pictures of the terrible destruction in New York, and search and rescue efforts have been going for almost 2 straight days now. As rescuers were hoping to find some survivors, instead they are confronted through this wreckage with more signs of death. Discovering body parts, a nearby building has been set up as a temporary morgue.
That's right, Vince. Right now, 82 people found dead, some 1,500 people being treated at local hospitals in New York, and there shot a live picture of the damage to the Pentagon building where a jetliner crashed into more than half of that structure, penetrating into that structure. The FBI will be on the scene, hand combing through the wreckage. They are trying to find the black box. They're trying to find the recordings, the last moments of exactly what happened in that cockpit out there. And many families standing vigil as well, still waiting and hoping for victims and survivors to emerge.
Trying to look for some clues, some sort of lead. And our coverage of America Under Attack is continuing here. I'm Vince Cellini.
And I'm Carol Lynn. Stay right there. We move on now with more on the search, in fact, and the investigation with the FBI. The work of searching through the massive debris is going on, of course, and CNN's Garrick Utley joins us live from New York with the latest situation there. Morning again, Garrick.
Morning again, Carol. The rescue is underway. It's taking place there at the lower end of Manhattan. I think this scene is quite familiar to all of us right now, and you still see that plume of smoke, some fire still burning there in the region, as well as dust from the rescue effort. The workers there, by the way, are working 12-hour shifts. It's a 24/7 operation and 12-hour shifts, and they are exhausted, but they're being cycled in and out, and there's no let-up. And as you indicated, much of this work is being done very slowly and very carefully, that in addition to the large pieces of concrete, when they move them and they're going through the dust and the rubble, it's being taken out by the bucketful, by the pailful, to make sure that no evidence is lost, and looking also for personal remains and possessions, to be quite frank. A moment ago, you were showing us some of the scenes of candlelight vigils across the country. There are many of them. It's a very moving sight, of course, and there was also one here in New York City, in Washington Square. And those familiar with New York City know Washington Square. It's at the southern end of Fifth Avenue. There's a wonderful late 19th century arch there. It's a popular gathering place in the center, the heart of historic Greenwich Village, which has been known for its poets, its beatniks, its bohemian way of life, its intellectuals. New York University has a campus around there. And this being New York, from time to time, even, yes, the mugger or the drug pusher doing his or her business there. Well, tonight there was a different atmosphere. People were pulling together, all kinds of people. And we wanted to get an impressionistic look of what it was like there from Thomas Nybo of CNN, a producer who went in with his camera. And this is what he found.
They gathered in a classic New York City park, which lost its classic view of the World Trade Center's Twin Towers. They came for different reasons. Some traded stories of how they heard the news.
The plane came over my building, very low, directly over my building, and I got off the toilet to see it for about 4 or 5 seconds wobble and go directly and disappear into the building.
Others just needed to get out and be with other New Yorkers.
I'm not a joiner and I'm not a group person, but I feel a deep need.
Some are too young to fully understand the terror, while others are in their final years after spending a lifetime in a city that now looks unfamiliar.
I'm on my way out, and this is their world now. And boy, what I saw today, I am not at all worried about this country.
Thomas Nybo, CNN, New York.
And no doubt there are going to be more of these vigils, candlelight or without candles, across the country for days to come, as the waiting continues to see how many possibly could have survived this terrorist attack. Carol, back to you now.
All right, thank you very much, Garrick Utley, reporting live from New York. In the meantime, the U.S. ambassador to Pakistan has given the government in Islamabad a choice. It will be either stand with the United States or Afghanistan. Pakistan is one of only 3 nations that recognizes the Islamic fundamentalist Taliban government as rulers of Afghanistan. CNN's Tom Mantir is in Islamabad with more on this meeting. Tom, I thought that the military ruler in Pakistan had already pledged support unstinted unstinted cooperation is what he said yesterday. How much further does the U.S. ambassador need to take this?
Yes.
Tom and Tier?
Well, I think it's gone a step further than unstinted cooperation. It is, we are with you. We are with you was the message that the American ambassador received this morning. She was at the president's office to present her credentials, one of 5 nations here in Pakistan presenting their credentials today for their new ambassador. Wendy Chamberlain has been the ambassador here in Islamabad for about a month, but this was probably the most time she has spent with the Pakistani president and did receive a message back. There was a phone call last night between U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell and the Pakistani president, but today the message was plain and clear to the American ambassador from the Pakistani leadership.
President made a very strong statement that he was with us, and I think that's probably all I'm able to say at this point. But let me just say that it was positive, it was strong. He repeated several times during the meeting that he was with us.
He is with us is something that the U.S. ambassador said not once but twice. Now, the people who are not there anymore is in Kabul. Many of the UN and diplomats and aid workers have made their way out, flying on UN flights here. The UN planes are pretty small, so it only takes about 15 people. So more than 40 people came out this morning. They expect 3 additional flights this afternoon as aid workers and diplomats come out. The German embassy has told its citizens they must leave Afghanistan. So some of the German aid workers were there. Also, there are 8 international residents that are in custody in Afghanistan awaiting trial on preaching Christianity in Afghanistan. They, of course, are there, but those who are assisting them and representing the nations involved are now leaving Afghanistan, coming here to Pakistan. So we expect at least 3 more flights of aid workers coming out this afternoon, and there's also some convoys coming out of Kabul trying to make their way out. There was also a rather important meeting last night between the senior leaders of the Taliban and the Pakistani government. This was a meeting to really determine where both sides stood. There was concern from the Pakistani, according to diplomatic sources here in Islamabad, that the Taliban had not condemned the attack on the United States in strong enough language. The Taliban responded to the Pakistanis that there was difficulty in the translation of the word, not using the word condemned, but criticized. So they held another press conference and used the word condemned. The Taliban has a real problem because they still have Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan, the problem being his presence there. And there is, I'm sure, a grave concern in Kabul and the rest of Afghanistan what his presence is going to mean should and when the U.S. decides that military action is going to be used. And it should also be pointed out that in that support by the Pakistani government, that may mean that the airspace in Pakistan could be used if there is a military attack against the Taliban and Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan. Carol?
So, Tom, I want to be perfectly clear. I only have less than a minute in your satellite window. You're saying that Pakistan is considering allowing the United States or NATO to use their soil to launch military operations against the Taliban or against Osama bin Laden if necessary.
Well, they haven't gone so far as to say use the soil, but in this unqualified support for the U.S. action against terrorism would probably mean a green light to use the airspace. Using the ground may be something totally different and not yet discussed. We'll have to wait and see.
All right, thank you very much. Tom Mentir reporting from Pakistan. Vince?
It is around 20 minutes before the hour of 6 a.m. in the east. We want to show you a live shot now of New York and certainly the site of Ground Zero, the cleanup that continues as New Yorkers will again wake up to this grim picture where the World Trade Center towers at one time stood and other buildings are severely damaged in that area. Also, we want to provide you with a live picture here of the Pentagon. And we were hoping to get that shot where we saw the American flag. It's a little wider shot here on the right of the screen, and it's draped down almost fully covering that 5-story wall on the Pentagon there. So very symbolic is that gesture as well as the rebuilding begins. Well, President Bush got a personal look at that burned out gash in the Pentagon. CNN's Candy Crowley looks at the White House in the hours immediately following the attack.
At daybreak, the nightmare was still there, smoldering and burning, defying the imagination, thwarting rescue efforts, and testing an untested president.
The United States of America will use all our resources to conquer this enemy. We will rally the world. We will be patient, we'll be focused, and we will be steadfast in our determination.
8 months in office, President George Bush is already writing what may be the most important page of his own legacy. In an unusual revelation, officials said both the White House and Air Force One may have been targets. The news sheds some light on the president's first hours following the attacks when, instead of returning immediately to Washington, he flew from Florida to a military base in Louisiana and then another in Nebraska. At the Pentagon, hope is gone. Officials say whoever might have survived the concussion of the plane's impact could not have lived through the fires that came after. There's no official estimate of how many lives were lost at the Pentagon or the World Trade Center. Authorities say they don't know, but everybody knows it will be awful. The FBI says it's identified most of the suicidal terrorists on the planes. Now they search for those behind the mayhem.
We also have identified through a number of leads, principally at the cities of origin, a number of individuals whom we believe may have had something to do with the hijackings, and we are pursuing those leads aggressively.
It is a very public manhunt. The FBI conducted a shoulder-to-shoulder search for evidence outside the Pentagon. A SWAT team descended on a Boston hotel in search of suspects. No arrests were made. Authorities also searched a Vero Beach, Florida home and questioned others in the southern Florida area. Terrorism's reach goes far beyond the areas of immediate destruction. The nation's airliners still aren't flying as the FAA institutes new security requirements and carriers search for ways to comply. Wall Street remains closed. The totality of the loss is incomprehensible, but the details are unbearable.
Someone on the 104th floor worked for the good firm of Cantor and Fitzgerald. We can't find hardly anybody from that firm who called his parents, told him he loved him, and they haven't heard from him since.
There are stories like it everywhere. People, knowing they are about to die, calling home to say, "I love you." People running for their lives and then stopping to carry a stranger to safety. The story here is that what prevailed in the final moment, in the face of death, is not fear or hate, but love and courage. Candy Crowley, CNN, Washington.
President Bush has called this an act of war, and he is working with the military to draw up different options in terms of a response. And he is asking for Congress to help as well. CNN's White House correspondent Kelly Wallace standing by this morning with more on that. Morning, Kelly.
Good morning, Carol. Well, we know negotiations went late into the night between White House officials and lawmakers over the wording of what would be a congressional resolution authorizing the U.S. to retaliate for the 4 deadly terrorist attacks. Now, we expect those negotiations to continue today. Some White House officials comparing this use of force resolution to the resolution passed by the Congress back in 1991 authorizing Mr. Bush's father to take military action against Iraq after the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. There you're looking at a live picture of the U.S. Capitol. Lawmakers and administration officials, again, likely to be hard at work over negotiations over that resolution today. Meantime, Carol, we are seeing really throughout the country and also here in Washington the feelings of people here about the tremendous tragedy that we have all witnessed. Last night, we saw some hundreds of Washington residents turn out for a candlelight vigil in front of the White House. There were people holding candles, some carrying American flags, waving flags as you see there, others singing, obviously reflecting the tremendous sadness about what this country has seen. Now, as for President Bush, he issued a statement last night saying that he was saddened and outraged by the loss of life. He has also called on all agency heads to excuse any federal employees without loss of pay from duty if they can't